I trusted my family with the only person I'd die for, and they left her on a mountain, alone, in the dark, in 32-degree weather, wearing nothing but a hoodie and jeans. My daughter was 14 years old. When I got the call, I wasn't panicking yet. I didn't even know anything was wrong. My mom had called to tell me they were heading home from the cabin, and that Nora had decided to stay behind with my sister's family for one more night. That should have been my first red flag. Nora hates staying anywhere without me. She sleeps with 2 nightlights. She still texts me when I'm in the next room just to say goodnight, but I was tired. I'd been working doubles at the hospital all week, and I told myself maybe she was finally growing up a little. Maybe a night with her cousins would be good for her. I said okay. I said, have fun, baby. I said I love you. That was the last normal thing I said for a long time. Let me back up. My name doesn't matter, but my daughter's name is Nora. She's 14, quiet, a little shy, the kind of kid who draws in her notebook during lunch and names every stray cat in the neighborhood. She's also the sole beneficiary of a trust fund set up by her late father, my husband Marcus, who died in a car accident when she was 6. Marcus came from money, old money, the kind of money that makes people act like they've lost their minds. When he died, his estate put just over $900,000 into a trust for Nora, accessible when she turns 18. I didn't want a cent of it. I told his lawyers to lock it up tight, and I went back to work. I picked up extra shifts. I bought our groceries with coupons. I never touched that money because it wasn't mine, it was hers. But here's the thing about money like that. People talk, and somehow, over the years, my side of the family found out exactly how much was sitting in that trust. I don't know who told them. Maybe I mentioned it once. Maybe Marcus's mother said something at a holiday dinner. It doesn't matter. What matters is that my parents knew, and my older sister Jess knew, and once they knew, something shifted. It was subtle at first. My mom started making little comments. Must be nice knowing Nora's set for life. My dad would joke about how I was sitting on a gold mine and still driving a 12-year-old Civic. Jess was the worst. She'd say things like, if anything ever happened to Nora, God forbid, you'd get that money back, right? I told her I didn't know how it worked and I didn't care. She laughed and said I was being naive. That was 2 years before the cabin trip. The trip was my mom's idea. Every October, my parents rent a cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains for a long weekend. It's a family tradition. This year, they insisted Nora come along, even though I couldn't get the time off work. They said it would be good for her to spend time with her cousins, Jess's 2 boys, Dylan and Tyler, who were 16 and 12. I hesitated. Nora didn't really get along with Dylan. He was loud and kind of mean, the type of kid who thought scaring people was hilarious. But Nora looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "What if it'll be different this time?" Grandma said she has something special planned for me. Something special. I almost said no. I wish every single day that I had said no. But I didn't. I packed her bag. I put her inhaler in the front pocket because she has mild asthma. I packed an extra blanket because she gets cold. I kissed her forehead at my parents' car and watched them drive away, and I went inside and started my shift. For 2 days, everything seemed fine. Nora texted me photos of the cabin, the view, a blurry picture of a deer. She seemed happy. On the second night, she sent me a text that said, "Mom, Aunt Jess keeps asking me weird questions about Dad's money. Is that normal?" I stared at that message for a long time. I typed back, "What kind of questions?" But she didn't respond. I figured she fell asleep. The next morning, I got my mom's call. They were heading home. Nora was staying one more night with Jess. 8 hours later, Nora called me. She was whispering. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said, "Mom, they left me. They all left. I'm on the trail and it's getting dark and I don't know where I am." My blood turned to ice. I said, "Nora, what do you mean, they left you?" She told me everything in broken sentences between sobs. That morning, Jess had suggested a family hike. Just Nora, Jess, Dylan, and Tyler. They drove about 40 minutes from the cabin to a trailhead Nora had never seen before. They hiked for almost 2 hours, deep into the woods, uphill, until Nora's legs were shaking. Then Jess said they were going to split up for a scavenger hunt. She told Nora to wait by a big rock formation and that they'd come back for her in 20 minutes. They never came back. Nora waited for an hour. then 2. She started walking, trying to retrace their steps, but the trail forked in 3 directions, and she couldn't remember which way they'd come. Her phone had 1 bar of signal, flickering in and out. The temperature was dropping fast. The forecast that night was 32 degrees. She was wearing a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. No water, no food, no flashlight. Her inhaler was in her bag, back at the cabin. I was 260 miles away. I called 911 before Nora even finished talking. I gave them every detail I had: the name of the cabin rental company, the mountain area, my sister's car, make and model. I told them my 14-year-old daughter was stranded alone on a mountain with no supplies and dropping temperatures. The dispatcher said they'd send a search and rescue team to the area but needed more information about the exact trailhead. I called my sister. She didn't answer. I called again, and again, and again. 7 calls in a row, no answer. I called my mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Her voice was calm, too calm. She said, "Oh, Jess said Nora wanted to explore a bit on her own. She's probably fine. Kids wander. Kids wander. My 14-year-old daughter with asthma, alone on a mountain in freezing temperatures." And my mother said kids wander. I said, "Mom, Nora just called me crying. She says they left her on a trail and no one came back." There was a pause. A long one. Then my mom said, "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Jess would never do that." I hung up. I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and drove. 260 miles. I drove 80, 90, 100 miles an hour when the road was empty. I called the local sheriff's office directly. I called the park ranger station for the area. I gave them Nora's description, her clothing, her medical condition. I told them she might be hypothermic within hours if they didn't find her. While I was driving, I did something else. I called Marcus's mother, Gloria. She's 71 years old and sharp as a razor. I told her what happened. She went quiet for about 10 seconds, and then she said, "I'm calling my attorney. Drive safe. We'll get her." Gloria called the Park Service herself. She called the county sheriff. She called a private search company that specializes in wilderness recovery. She told them money was no object and to find her granddaughter tonight. Meanwhile, I kept trying my sister. On the 11th call, she finally picked up. "Oh my God. Calm down," she said. "She's fine. We just lost track of time and figured she'd find her way back. She's not a baby." I said, "She's 14, Jess. She's on a mountain in the dark, in 32 degrees. She has asthma." Jess said, "You're overreacting. You always overreact." I said, "Where is the trailhead? Give me the exact location." She hesitated. Then she said she didn't remember. She said it was somewhere off Route 17, maybe 20 minutes past the gas station. When I asked her to check her phone's GPS history, she said she'd already deleted it to free up storage. Deleted her GPS history. The night her niece was lost on a mountain. I knew right then. I felt it in my chest like a rock. This wasn't careless. This was planned. I called the sheriff back. I told him I believed my daughter had been deliberately abandoned and that my sister had deleted evidence from her phone. He said he'd note it, but that their priority was the search. I understood. I just needed Nora found alive. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. It was the park ranger. They'd found her. She was curled up under a rock overhang about 4 miles from the nearest trailhead, shivering so badly she couldn't stand. Her lips were blue. Her fingers were white. She'd taken off her sneakers and put her socks over her hands because she didn't have gloves. She was conscious, but barely responsive. Her temperature was 94.6 degrees. Another hour, the medic said, and they would have been looking at severe hypothermia, maybe organ failure, at 14 years old. When I got to the hospital, I ran through the doors and found her in a bed with heated blankets and an IV. Her face was red and swollen from crying. She looked up at me and said, "Mom, they told me to wait. They promised they were coming back." I held her so tight I thought I might break her. I didn't cry. Not then. I knew if I started, I wouldn't stop, and I needed to be strong for what came next. Here's what I found out over the next 72 hours. Nora had been recording voice memos on her phone since the hike started. She does that sometimes. She likes to narrate her day and listen back to it later, like a diary. She didn't tell anyone she was doing it. So when Jess dropped her at the rock formation and said, "Stay here, we'll be right back," Nora's phone caught the whole thing. But it also caught something else. About 40 seconds after Jess walked away, you can hear Dylan say, "Are we seriously just leaving her here?" And Jess responds. Her exact words were, "She'll figure it out. And if she doesn't, that's not our problem." That's not our problem. My sister said that about my daughter. The recording also caught them getting into the car. You can hear the engine start. You can hear Tyler ask, "Is Nora going to be okay?" And Jess say, "Don't worry about her. Worry about what we talked about." What we talked about. I handed that phone to the sheriff personally. But the recordings weren't the only evidence. When Marcus's mother, Gloria, heard what happened, she hired a private investigator. Within a week, that investigator found text messages between my sister and my mother from 3 weeks before the trip. My mom had texted Jess, "If something happens to Nora, does the trust go to next of kin?" Jess replied, "I looked it up. If she's gone, the money reverts to the estate. And who's the executor? Her mother. And who does her mother listen to? Us." They had planned this. 3 weeks in advance. They chose the trail because it was remote, poorly marked, and had no cell coverage in most areas. They chose October because the temperatures drop fast after sunset. They packed warm clothes for Dylan and Tyler, but deliberately didn't remind Nora to bring her jacket from the cabin that morning. My mother, the woman who held Nora as a baby. My sister, who threw her 3rd birthday party. They looked at my daughter and saw a dollar sign, and they decided she was expendable. The sheriff arrested Jess first, then my parents. The charges were attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, child endangerment, and reckless endangerment of a minor. Not attempted manslaughter. Not negligence. The DA looked at those text messages, listened to those recordings, and said this was premeditated. This was intentional. This was attempted murder. My parents tried to play innocent. My dad said it was all a misunderstanding. My mom cried in the interrogation room and said she never wanted anyone to get hurt. But the texts were there. The deleted GPS was there. The voice memos were there. And when the investigators searched Jess's house, they found a printed-out copy of Marcus's trust agreement in her desk drawer. She had highlighted the section about what happens if the beneficiary dies before turning 18. Highlighted it. In yellow. Jess's lawyer tried to argue that leaving a teenager on a hiking trail wasn't the same as attempted murder. The DA played the recording in court. If she doesn't, that's not our problem. He showed the weather data from that night. He brought in the paramedic who found Nora, who testified that another 60 to 90 minutes of exposure could have killed her. He brought in a wilderness survival expert, who said that an untrained 14-year-old, in those conditions, without supplies, had roughly a 30% chance of surviving the night, if not found. 30%. My daughter had a 70% chance of dying that night, and my family knew it. The trial lasted 11 days. Jess was found guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, and child endangerment. She was sentenced to 22 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for 15 years. My mother was found guilty of conspiracy and child endangerment. She got 12 years. My dad, who the evidence showed was less involved in the planning but fully aware and complicit, got 8 years for conspiracy and endangerment. Dylan, who was 16, was tried in juvenile court. He testified against his mother in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll be in a juvenile facility until he's 21. Tyler was 12 and wasn't charged, but he's in therapy now. I don't blame Tyler. He's a child. After the sentencing, something else happened that I didn't expect. Gloria, Marcus's mother, called me. She said she'd been thinking about this for a long time, and she wanted me to know that she had updated her own estate plan. Gloria is worth considerably more than the trust. She told me she had removed my parents and Jess from any future consideration, not that they were ever included, but she wanted to make sure. She also told me she had added a provision. When Nora turns 18, in addition to Marcus's trust, Gloria is setting up a second trust for her education, her first home, her future. She said, "They tried to take everything from that girl. I want to make sure she has more than they could ever imagine." I cried for the first time when Gloria told me that, not because of the money, because someone in this world, someone from Marcus's family, loved my daughter enough to fight for her. even at 71 years old, even from 2 states away. It's been 8 months since the trial. Nora still has nightmares. She sleeps with every light on now, not just 2 night lights. She goes to therapy twice a week. She won't go outside after dark, not even to take out the trash. She flinches when the temperature drops. Last week, she asked me, "Do you think Grandma ever actually loved me?" I didn't know what to say. I just held her and told her the truth. I said, "I don't know, but I do, and Gloria does." And that's enough. Some people have asked me if I went too far, if pressing attempted murder charges against my own parents was extreme, if I should have handled it privately, kept it in the family, found some way to forgive. Let me be clear. They chose a remote trail on purpose. They checked the weather and picked the coldest night. They separated my daughter from her belongings. They drove away and left her. They deleted the evidence, and when I called, panicking, they told me I was overreacting. That's not a mistake. That's not poor judgment. That's not family drama. That's a plan to let my child die so they could take her money. I didn't go too far. I didn't go far enough. If the law allowed more, I would have pushed for more. But 22 years for Jess and 12 for my mother will have to be enough. They'll be old when they come out. They'll have lost everything. Their reputations, their freedom, their family. Because I am their family, and I will never speak to them again. Nora is their family, and they tried to erase her. I moved last month. New state, new house, closer to Gloria. Nora started at a new school. She joined the art club. She drew a picture of a mountain last week, which surprised me. I asked her about it, and she said, "I want to remember that I survived it. I don't want to be scared of it forever." She's 14 years old, and she's braver than anyone I've ever met. To the people watching this, I want to say one thing. Watch who asks about your money. Watch who asks about your will, your insurance, your children's inheritance. If someone in your family starts calculating what happens if something goes wrong, that's not curiosity. That's a blueprint. Protect your children. Trust your gut. And never, ever let anyone tell you you're overreacting when your child is in danger. A mother knows. I knew. And I'll never stop being grateful that I acted fast enough. If you've been through something similar, or if this story made you feel something, leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe to Revenge with Chloe. I'll see you in the next one.